Mr. Whale, you have been found guilty by a group of your peers of conspiring to provide the very worst in late-night entertainment. Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence?
No, Your Honor.
Well, I have no hesitation, then, in sentencing you to consecutive screenings of performing pets without intermission and until such time as you make a proper apology to this court. Take him down and cue titles.
Lovely, Eric, fine. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, at home and in the audience, and walk in front of me as many times, Eric, as you like.
I will.
Tonight, may I introduce our celebrity floor manager, of course, Mr. Eric Hall. You all know him if you are football fans, and as we are into the football season now, this is the man who has more expensive male meat on his table than anybody.
Please don't. I feel like Goldberg of the Old Bagel tonight.
Do you? And you look pretty like him. You look pretty like him. Tonight's show, we're going to try and.
Oh, my clerk of the board. Sorry, I've got to bring my clerk along.
Oh, sorry, and the clerk of the court.
Trevor,
yes.
This is Trevor, my clerk.
Yes, very nice and very artistic as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's a shame.
I all these clothes.
It's a shame you couldn't find something to fit him, really.
No.
Still, never mind. Tonight we're going to try and explore some of those rather dark areas when you get taken to court. Maybe if you happen to be a witness or if you're one of the accused, then it all seems to me to be very. Sorry about that. It all seems to be...
We've got to do the map.
I'm going to do the map. I'm just explaining to my friends at home.
We can do that later. Let's do the map.
It all seems to me to be a rather confusing place to be in court, all right? So tonight, maybe we will open up some of those problems. And then a little later on, we're going to do some lambada. What can I tell you? Right,
monster map.
Yeah, monster map. There we are. And we are dedicating the map tonight. I have it on my script here, Eric, funnily enough, my running order. To the staff and inmates of various prisons all over the country this evening. So for all those of you who are otherwise at Her Majesty's pleasure, and we're doing it particularly to the border country here, border television up to Carlisle, across over here, lovely places. There's Holt Whistle there, and then there's Bellingham there and everything.
Bragg.
And of course, Melvin Bragg, who shares with me some highly intellectual, cultural pastimes. We're very, very like me.
You're better than Melvin.
Do you think so?
Bragg. You're much better.
He's got more hair than me.
I want to come back.
Yeah.
You're much better.
OK, you can come back. So we dedicate it to border television. That's all those people watching up there and the sheep and everybody else. Right. Thank you very much indeed. Would you like to we carry on with the programme? Good. This is where we do the business first, and then we'll get into the show. The business, of course, the competition, so we can be on the air. A couple of weeks ago, we asked a question in the programme where Dr. Ruth was our guest, and the winner on that programme, Mike Homden, Walton on Thames in Surrey. He's off to Mallorca with a friend for 2 weeks. Now, this week's question, what is the Old Bailey? What is the Old Bailey? Is it a liqueur? Or maybe that's liquor. A dance? Or a court of law? And it's a difficult one, that. The lines are open until midnight on Sunday, 0891 900 007. You could win. We will give you free a week for 2 people on the island of Ibiza. What a holiday competition that is. Thank you very much indeed. Please welcome my first guest, just to get a feel of... Yes, Frankie, that's very nice, Frankie, and very lovely, and I think that's probably more than enough. Would you welcome my first guest this evening? They are, ladies first, very interesting. I'm going to just get onto the right page here. Sorry, Marilyn. Right, Marilyn Wisby, who here is in the middle. Marilyn, her claim to fame in being a brilliant singer in the clubs for many years. She's also the daughter of a great train robber.
Yeah.
and the wife of Mad Frankie Fraser, Mad Frankie the Axeman. And, of course, here, Tony, I never know how to pronounce your... I mean,
Lambriano.
I want to always say Lambrisco or Lupriano, or and, of course, because I know Tony quite well, which I wouldn't take a liberty like that otherwise after you've read his book. And a nice Irishman. He used to be one of the sort of the Greek mafia, weren't you, at one time?
Call me that, yeah.
No, I could, couldn't I? Right. Now, these guys have been through the system. Frankie has actually done 40 years in prison?
A bit more.
A bit more?
Yeah.
A bit more than 40 years?
Yeah, I'm greedy.
Yes, I know, I know. But the thing is, did it ever teach you anything, Frankie? I mean, you wrote a nice book out of it, and made a few people say, well, that's really not, not the sort of thing for somebody who's done some of the things you've done to be able to profit like this. Did you learn anything?
Sure. I learnt not to trust the system, obviously. Mm. Justice, to me, was a joke. It's as simple as that, James.
I mean, but you were guilty of some of the things you did, weren't you? I mean, you weren't a nice person at those times.
No, sure, certainly not. But only to people like myself.
Well, yeah. I mean,
you know, muggins and old women and children, untouchable, James.
Yeah. So I wouldn't, some of us would have been okay unless we sort of got into your area, as it was.
Well, you wouldn't have, if you'd have been ordinary guys, no way would I have had a row with you in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stories I hear, Tony, I mean, some of the things like nailing people to floorboards with 6-inch nails through their feet, and allegedly Frankie was known as the dentist. Was that right?
Well, I mean, it gets out of context. I mean, Frank was sent for trial. He got a very heavy sentence. But I mean, after charges, after trumped up, it just wasn't true. I mean, it's criminal against criminal. So how could you believe one and not the other? I mean, but unfortunately, Frank was in the box, so it's different.
When you were, I'm not coming to you at the moment, Marilyn, because you haven't been actually in the, you obviously had, your father was that, and you went through the system, you went to court and everything else. It's quite a frightening experience, isn't it?
Oh, terrible, because you're not getting justice. I mean, unfortunately for me and Frank, on the trials we sat on, we're prejudged before we even went on trial. For example, the judge kept saying during our trial to one of the defence lawyers, look, you better stop jumping up and down and putting these submissions because you'll sort this out in another court. In other words, the appeal court, you're guilty. And sort out the appeal courts. It was as simple as that. We were gone, finished.
But you were a criminal. I mean,
was a criminal.
You're not
yes.
now, are you?
No.
But you were a criminal. A bad bee.
Well, not only amongst our own people. Not against the general run of the public. I mean, it didn't happen like that.
We're going to talk about young crime a little later on, and what sort of deterrents there are, if there are any. Is prison a deterrent or not? What do you think?
Well,
I mean, you were there a long time.
If it was, remember, I'd had the cat and the birch in prison, only for knocking prison officers about, well, defending myself, really. And you didn't have to do a lot them days. You only had to go like Axel, prison officer, you'd get it. And bread and water with it. No nights, no mattress.
Let's go on over that bit a minute, Frankie. Now, let's just go through it, because you were, and you talk about it in the book, you were actually beaten in prison. When you were in prison, it was quite legal. Corporal punishment in prison was legal.
Legal, that's right.
What did they do to you? Just explain what they did to you.
Well, you were sentenced to it, and you could wait a fortnight, James, before you had it. And in that fortnight, they would play mind games with you. You always had it after breakfast or after dinner. So you'd be in your cell and had no nice rubber thing on the floor, then stone flags. And you'd hear footsteps on the cold slabs. So you'd be all ready. Or you'd hear, "Get Fraser," but nothing would happen. And they'd do that 2 or 3 times to wind you up.
When you were taken to a room. It all happened in a room.
In a laundry, as a general rule. In the laundry in the prison.
Now, what did they took you in there, you were strapped to something?
That's right. And,
talk me through it. Tell me what happened.
Well, all of a sudden your door was opened. It wasn't a mind game now, this was for real. And mobs of prison officers didn't put no shoes on you, just rushed you through. You were there in no time, didn't waste no time, you were up. And Francis Davidson Fraser, you've been sentenced to 18 strokes of corporal punishment. In your case, the cat. Stroke 1. Bosh! Stroke 2. Bosh! Sometimes it could be a silent count. We wouldn't hear a word.
Right, the cat is...
you never ever see it, and you never ever see who done it, do you? You see
So you're
nothing.
tied down, your face is front,
That's
you can't
right.
feel it.
You go through
Yeah.
a mask.
And you're spread-eagled.
Spread-eagled.
Now, a cat is a whip with, what, 8 or 9 different
That's right,
lens?
yes.
And does it cut into your skin?
Well, if it didn't, what would it be the use of it? Yeah, obviously it does.
It cuts into your...
Yeah,
Well,
of course it does.
some might say it wasn't any use at all, Frankie, because you kept going back.
That's true, because I only defended myself, you know.
So when they'd beaten you, you had to...
Sure.
Presumably you were taken to the hospital after that.
No, don't be
No?
daft. No,
Hospital
they just
wing, no?
patched you up there, the medical, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
and you was back in a punishment cell in no time, carrying on with your bread and water.
In fact, the Home Office didn't even want to show you the
No,
cat and the
no.
birch.
Really?
No, did they?
No, we asked
in
to
the
have a look at
museum.
it. They would refuse to have it.
But if that happened now in prison, do you think that... And if it was publicised that that happened, do you think a lot of these kids who were getting into trouble would stay away?
I don't think so, no. If anything, it would put their back up even more, most probably.
So being hit, really, or having that sort of punishment wouldn't actually...
I can only speak for myself here, in fairness. I can't really speak for anyone else. It certainly didn't deter me in any way, as regards having a row with prison governors and prison officers. If anything, it made me more determined to let them see it didn't deter me. It really pushed me the other way. Whether it would do the same for other people, I can't say that, James. It's a bit hard. Let me tell you, it was a very ferocious punishment, but the birch was even worse.
It was?
Well, at least, I know it'd
'Cause
be
that's a
hard for
stick,
you
isn't
to
it?
understand this, but the cat was a bit more manly. It was across your
Yeah.
shoulders sort of style, but the birch was across your deaf and dumb, your bum. And a bit more humiliating, isn't it? You're bare, and it really went to... And you're very tender round there, aren't you, James?
Well, yes, some people are. Some...
I'm sorry,
Yes, Eric, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Especially Mr. Fraser. Very sorry to interrupt Mr. Fraser.
Yes, you mustn't
I'm
take any
very sorry to
liberties.
interrupt Mr. Fraser.
Yes.
But we've got to go to the music, and we've got to come back to this item after the music.
Will you stay around? Fascinating. OK, thanks
Yes,
very much indeed.
Frankie stayed around. He stayed around for a long time.
He has,
Not
yes.
40 years.
Yes,
but-
yeah.
A
OK.
little while.
Right,
I
little
love
music.
Frankie Fraser. I love Frankie Fraser.
You do?
Thanks,
No,
Eric.
no more laundries. No more laundries.
Fine,
No
okay.
more laundries. Gotta clean my
Ladies
shirts
and
at
gentlemen,
home.
please welcome the first time on television. All right, Snow in July. Let's hope not. This is their song tonight. And it's... I wanted to call you Ben Beaver, but they said no. It's Ben Buvoa. I thought it was Ben Beaver. Ben Buvoa, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed. That was a Bivoire. Bivoire, very unusual track, very nice. And that was called Snow in July. Just before we go to the competition and take the break, I think the two of you, I mean, if we had more people, can we get a shot of this? If this was how our courts in this country were, we'd have no trouble. We'd have no trouble. Tony was just telling me that it goes from being convicted as former Cray gang boss and one of the most feared people in London. He's got a play recently back at the Edinburgh Festival, which became very successful. Michael Ball went there, Michael Winner, they all liked it.
Yeah, they enjoyed it very much indeed.
They will. Maybe we'll...
All delighted about it.
So you could be a big producer before long, couldn't
Yeah.
you? Woo! And if not, well, we'll go around and get some protection out of his club. That's what we'll do, yeah. Right, before we take the break, how would you like to go? Two people will send you for a week on the beautiful holiday resort of Ibiza, OK? All you have to do is tell us, what is the Old Bailey? Is it a liquor, a dance, or a court of... I mean a liqueur. I keep saying liquor. It's a liqueur. Or a court of law. Thank you, Mr. Mansfield, for keeping me on the straight and narrow. 0891 900 007 is the number to ring, and that number is available to you until midnight on Sunday. Yes.
Hugh James.
Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back. Nice to see you there tonight. This, of course, is Eric Hall, the agent of many of the top footballers and personal friend of Alan Sugar's.
Yes.
He's here on the show tonight.
Ish.
Purely because he rang up and said, listen, if I can come on the show, then there's no trouble with cup final tickets. Is that right?
Don't forget, but what about my clerk? You keep ignoring my clerk.
Sorry, and Eric's
He's
clerk
dressed
as well.
for the occasion.
As,
he went out and spent a fortune today.
As we, you know, it's a shame you're such an ugly body, really, isn't it? Is it a shame that you couldn't have done something? Like yes, I know. And then you could
forget body. Let's go on with the
I'm just going over here a bit. Okay, right, over this way. Now, please, ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome Mark Solon? Thank you. Now, isn't that pretty? It's lovely. Can we get a shot of that? I think this is so nice. My whale down here. So it's really very, very nice. I do like that. Now, Mark, they might say, why have we got you on the programme tonight? We've just heard from my friends over here, former members of the underworld, and some may say the streets of London were safer when they were actually active than it is now. Prison doesn't look like it's a deterrent, and the legal system doesn't look as if it's that sort of friendly to most of us who haven't studied law or had law degrees. And you actually now run a sort of training, what, a training session, a seminar? How would you describe it?
What we do is teach people how to give evidence. What we find is that lawyers have 5, 6, 7 years training. We have an adversarial system whereby it's a fight. Two sides are fighting. And so you have a witness who's basically a lamb for slaughter. And so we teach witnesses how to speak, what happens in the court, what to do when they get there.
So you're like a bit of a thespian, a drama teacher.
A drama teacher.
I didn't say drama queen, I'm sorry, but a drama teacher. So when, let's take a scenario. Maybe I was a witness in court not so long ago, and I have actually been in court from time to time. And when the brief, Mr. Jacobs, for instance, comes up and is cross-examining, says something, and I want to answer, I say, well, it happened like, no, I just yes or no. And I said to this bloke, look, don't shout at me, and I will tell you the answer to your question, just yes or no, Mr. Whale. I said, you are offensive and you are rude. And the judge started banging his thing. It was like an Ealing comedy.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't realise they behaved like that.
Well, the one thing to remember is the only person to speak to in the courtroom is the judge.
Well, that's a good... Ignore the flipping solicitor.
Ignore the lawyer.
Yes.
Ignore the barrister. Ignore the solicitor.
But what about if he harasses you and say, just yes or no?
Well, you are the one with the evidence. The lawyer has no evidence whatsoever. You are assisting the judge in making the decision. So the judge needs to hear from you. So I would suggest you stop, turn to the judge, ask his help.
I mean, you are allowed to say... I mean, if just because the solicitor says, or the barrister or whatever says to you, no, I just want one word, you don't actually have to answer in one word.
No.
Because there are very few things you can answer with yes or no.
Exactly. So you say what you need to say.
Do you think judges don't help witnesses enough? No, you can be honest with me.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do. Depends which courts you're talking about. If you're talking about criminal courts or civil courts. Civil courts are where two people have a dispute. They can't come to a decision, so they go to the judge, who they pay, by the way, but through their taxes, and say, please, judge, help us come to a decision for us.
But aren't you really helping people to lie better? Isn't that what you're doing? You're saying because, you know, a lot of witnesses aren't telling the truth, are they?
That is true, but no, I'm not teaching anyone to lie.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is teaching them how to say what they need to say.
Let's ask, maybe Frankie, Frankie, would you have benefited if you, I mean, I know you weren't a witness, but you were in the dock, but you must have been put on the witness stand from time to time.
Many times, yeah.
Would you have benefited maybe from somebody telling you how to...
I think that's very sensible what Mike is doing there, and I applaud him for it, because a lot of witnesses, they really are nervous, they're bamboozled, prosecuting counsel twist them round, and it's good people like Mike who's doing a wonderful job, who can help the witness to tell the truth when he's in there, and to help the defendant or help themselves.
The interesting thing about our prison system is that there is nobody guilty in there. So it's strange that everybody who's in there is completely innocent of the charges brought before them. Is my learned counsel all right?
I'm Monster Hot.
You're Monster Hot.
My clerk has got my tissue, so I'm okay.
Yes, well, please, as long as you're okay.
The thing is that the courts are not the caring, sharing place like the James Wells show. They're testing you.
Yeah.
The evidence has to be tested. That's the point of the system.
How much does it cost?
Depends if you are Joe Public. If you're Joe Public, it's £45. If you're an expert witness, it could be up to £500.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Oh, sorry, Mara. Yeah. Quick question from Marilyn.
Police so-called eyewitnesses and paid informers.
I think, yes, anybody...
Well, anyone who turns up, yes.
Okay.
Good point.
Eyewitnesses that are never called in court.
I think if we get into points of law like that, we'll get a little bit lost on this one.
I'll have to start charging, you see, this is the trouble.
Because he charges us, and he's going to charge us. Hang on a minute, Tony, I'll come back to you in a moment. You swap with Gary Jacobs. Thanks very much indeed for the moment. We're going to see Mark and the different guys a little later. Ladies and gentlemen, the legal eagle, the voice of the people, the man with the muscle. And don't you think he looks like Fred Flintstone? Is it Fred Flintstone looking like? Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Jacobs.
Thank you, my dear.
More like Fred Flintstone.
No clap.
No.
You see,
why are you dressed like that tonight?
well, I'm actually dressed the way I would very much like to dress when I have to wear a shirt and tie when I go to court.
You don't have to wear a shirt and tie in court.
I do. I have to dress very, very down. I have to dress in pinstripes and plain shirts because that's what's expected of me.
Do they not let you in? Is it like going to one of those
nonsense, but
clubs where they won't let you in if you're not following the dress code?
The judge will simply say, Mr. Jacobs, I cannot hear you.
Well, he's
Whatever I say, that's the response that he will give. It's a technical term, and it means basically you're not dressed in a way that this court is prepared to allow you to address us.
Is that, Tony, is that why sort of guys who were with the mob and everything always are in very smart and sharp suits, just in case you're going to be in Nick before long? And
No, it didn't actually work like that, but I must bring a point up here. 60% of inmates, and Dave Courtney sitting in the audience today is an actor, he's played in the film The Crazy Net, he would tell the same as me, are inadequate, they can't read or write. So when they go into police stations, they're at a disadvantage right away. So, I mean, you've got to remember... Well, that's changed, hasn't it? That's changed to a large extent because... Well, not really, Gary, people now have the benefit of free advice from a solicitor, normally a very experienced solicitor who specialises in criminal defence.
Yeah, but less people now than used to have cause to get that, don't they?
More people now.
More people now?
Well, of course, there are more people being arrested, more people being questioned, more people
but
being
legal
released.
aid. Are you talking about legal aid, aren't you?
Not, legal aid is one thing. I'm talking about the free system whereby any person who is in a police station in this country, it can be a witness, it can be a potential defendant, is entitled to free advice from a solicitor and is entitled to have free of charge a solicitor present throughout the whole time.
Do you agree with what we're saying, though, tonight, that it is very frightening, and for people who've never been involved in anything...
It's a horrific experience because it's an unjust experience.
And we don't get the best out of it, our legal system in this country, do we?
In my experience, we do not. We have a situation which I've never quite understood. One thing I do like about the American system that we don't have is that when the evidence is finished, the parties' advocates can address the jury and they can turn to the jury and say, this is my case. And the judge will then very briefly let the jury know what the law is and go away. In this country, judges sum up the evidence. What they actually do, I've known a judge take 2 days to sum up the evidence, of which 45 minutes
was talking about the defence case, and 1 day and 5 hours is talking about the prosecution case. Still goes on. Let me finish. Still goes on, but the Court of Appeal rarely overturns such jury convictions because the jury end up convicting because the judge told them.
Okay, let me just go to Dave Courtney, who was mentioned. Dave is just down here in front. This is Dave for there we are. Now, Dave, you are an actor, but you're also you're a convicted armed robber, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, so you've been in and out of Nick and.
A few times, yeah.
But you're not telling me that you were innocent of any of them.
The ones I got away with, I'm going to say I'm innocent of. The ones they caught me with, you caught me.
I'm not. Listen, Dave, I've never met you before, but I'm not being rude. But I mean, if I was ever going to cast an armed robber in a film, it would be you. I mean, that's
the only bit I get. I'd like to be in Baywatch, but I just get.
Well, I can arrange that.
Do you?
Eric and I can arrange that.
Do you feel that when? I mean, obviously you're an old hand. You're. Could you? Sorry, Mr. Mansfield's talking to me. Yes, Mr. Mansfield. What? What's on his fingers? Oh, you got a close-up of his fingers. That's like a Baywatch crutch scene. Fine, sorry. Okay, that's all bought and paid for, isn't it? No, the rings. The rings.
Not mine.
But you now must be an old hand. You don't do armed robberies or anything like that now.
Not anymore. Not during the week, anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, did you find when you first went into court, if perhaps the system had been more easily explained to you, would you have got off more easily? I don't know.
No, I understood exactly what it was about.
Yeah.
A lot depends on what face you got. A lot depends on what you actually look like. Because before, as I got into a witness, as I got into the box, the jury would look at something like me and not even hear what the case was, and they'd go, "He's obviously guilty." You know, I'd get 2 years if I went up as a witness for someone, wouldn't
I? James, can I say that in fact, I think it's very true to say that in the system there are very much stereotypes that the courts seem to treat certain people certain ways. And I have to say this, in my experience, which horrifies me more than anything, more women go to prison for first or second offences than any other group in our community.
Can I make a point?
That's unjust.
Yeah. Can I make a point here? Because I don't want to see... I mean, I've met Tony and Frankie before, and Marilyn. I've never met Dave. And there comes a time, and I think you will agree with me, where these guys are show busy now. Yes. But what we mustn't do, and what I think everybody will agree, and I think that Tony and Frankie will, and I'm sure Dave will agree, is we must not glamorise crime.
No.
Because, you wouldn't want to see people...
If I could say this, one thing I've never done, I could speak for Frank and I could speak for the Cray twins. We never, ever tell anyone to follow in our footsteps. I've always made this plain in our books and whatever we do, and the series The Underworld and Gangsters and all that, not one of us ever promoted crime. And Frank always said a very good thing here. Am I someone to follow after 40 years of imprisonment? And I think he hit the nail on the head there. It doesn't
quite right.
Yeah.
Surely, who would want to follow me?
Who would want to follow?
Bread and water, the cat,
That's
the birch,
right.
over 40 years, you think.
So,
years
although
and years
now...
of solitary confinement.
Yeah.
Any kid would go, God, blimey, I wouldn't want to be like that, idiot.
Do you ever get the feeling, though, that perhaps we're doing this and you're here and you're successful and you're acting, Dave, and you've written books, you've got a best-selling play going on, Tony? I mean, it is glamorising it to a certain extent.
Well, no, it's not actually glamorising. At one time, first time I met Frankie last year, I think it was, or the year before, I actually condemned, not what he does, but I condemned the media for the way in which they blew up his past and tried to make it glamorous. The media make it glamorous, but in fact I've read Frankie's book, and I'm afraid to say I've also read every book written about the Craze, because I was there at the time. Frankie knows that. To be perfectly honest, he's teaching us all a lesson. The one thing he's teaching us is do not commit crime.
Can we have a little light relief, please?
We're
going to have
applaud
to...
Don't you touch me, Eric.
Oh,
sorry, that's...
Can we interrupt Mason Perry, because he never wins a case? And
you want to watch the libel law applies here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's a song called Windmills.
Allegedly.
Are you ready, guys? Okay, here we are. Bevoa. They're going to call themselves Bevoa. I think they should have called themselves Beaver. But Bevoa and Windmills!
On top of the hill, the windmill flows with the wind. Color spray, you ray the souls unfound. Turning like an angel's heart with intention. Peaceful means we sow the things this time. There's some magical reason for these beautiful seasons. Windmills of joy. over the ocean. Dolphins sing their song right from the deep. They never change and they never rearrange what they want to keep. A magical reason for the beautiful seasons. Windmills of time, windmills of time, windmills of time, windmills of time. Sunshine, making the most of our sunshine. You gotta be happy when you're mine. We're opening doors to God's machinery. Windmills of time, the windmills of time, 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 windmills of time.
I've got another quick question. I beg your pardon? They're just going on a nationwide tour. Good, so I hope you have a good time on your nationwide tour of this great nation of ours. Thank you very much. Before we go to the break, let me just remind you of the competition. A week for two people on the island of Ibiza, which has to be taken after the 15th of September, which is okay because you couldn't really get it before the 15th of September, let's face it, and there'll be lots of people there now. What is the Old Bailey? Is it A, a liquor, B, a dance, or C, a court of law? Difficult one. 0891 900 007. And the lines are open until midnight. So get ringing because you can have that holiday courtesy of us at Whale On for two people for nothing. We're back with the final part in a few moments. Welcome back. Excuse me. Welcome back.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes.
Please welcome James Well.
Thank you. Okay, now, Eric, thank you. You're doing
over here.
You're doing a remarkable job. Can we have a look at the pictures? It's these are nice. We've got Gary, our resident pavement artist over here. And,
that's me, isn't it?
That's you, yes, over there. And then the Lady of Justice over there. Very good that looks. Maybe the Old Bailey would like to commission that and have it hung in the foyer. I mean, it's wonderful. It's lovely. It's lovely. Yes, Gary, that is, you are so talented.
Monster sensational.
We hate you. Come down the ladder, Gary, so we can see your picture. You, we don't want to see. But the picture, Gary, by the way, Gary has just come back from Toronto, where he's been painting streets in Toronto. Is that right? Over in Canada. Yeah. Okay, good. Streets. It's not Gareth Hunt, is it? He's too busy shaking his beans. Right, let's, just before we carry on, thank you for all the letters. Don't forget, if you'd like to write in, we'd love to hear from you. I've got a lovely letter here. It says, to His Magnificence James Whale, for the last 15 years, I've been sleeping with your wife. Really? And goes on into great description. So thank you very much indeed. What a sick person you are. And this one comes from Tanya Watson, and I had to read, this is lovely. Tanya Watson said, Dear James, I love your show, and you really are an extremely sexy man. I was wondering if you were as arrogant away from the studio. Maybe you could let me know. Absolutely. Good, okay, fine. On we go with the show. I am. All right, guys?
George Martin.
Okay.
Martin.
For those people, by the way, for those people who are just tuning in and wonder what we're doing and why Eric Hall is dressed like this, of course, Eric, a big football promoter, agent of football stars, is here dressed like this. He just likes to be on television.
And what about my clerk, please? My clerk.
Sorry, and your clerk?
Trevor.
Trevor, your clerk. You all right? Okay,
Can we show you what he's wearing?
Yeah, well, of course, Eric and
I'll show you what he's not wearing.
Yeah, fine. That's good. No, I think it's fine. Anyway, please, look, please, we do it. Could you, Eric? Fine. So we could have had a lady clerk. Yes, we should have had a lady clerk. Why didn't we have a lady clerk?
We can't afford one.
No, you were booking the clerk.
Oh, right. I was trying to get Clark Kent.
Were you? Fine. So we were trying to explore the problems of the judicial system in this country. And so far, I don't think we've done anything except make them worse. Anyway, welcome back. This is George. Where are you? George is over here. George Martin. I thought, George, that I was interviewing the great Beatles record producer, and you've heard that before, so I don't do that. It really wasn't very funny. George, you were a villain, but you're reformed. Yes. You are reformed. OK, George. And now you have been taken on as a crime prevention officer. That's right, yeah. And, well, first of all, how did you become reformed? Because talking to Frankie and Tony and even down here, of course, we have found out that people with very little hair obviously turn to a life of crime. Or television. How did you get reformed?
I've actually got more than 1,000 previous convictions.
Oh, my God. Yes, fine. For what? I mean, bad stuff?
Theft, robbery, wounding, GBH, JBH, handling stolen goods, burglary, fraud, deception,
yes.
So on. I actually spent 17.5 years in prison.
17.5 years. Mm-hmm. Now, what I am concerned about on doing a programme, but first of all, you know, we want to be slightly entertaining anyway, but I want to get the message across, and sometimes I'm thinking to myself tonight, maybe it's difficult, particularly with him standing behind me, that we're glamorising this. I don't want to glamorise crime. You don't at all.
Absolutely not. I actually created the most successful crime prevention exercise in British history, which is called the Garth Prison Inmate Encounter Scheme. Young offenders are taken to Garth Prison in Leyland, locked in the prison and confronted by the inmates. That shows a proven success rate of 92%. And that totally de-glamorises prison.
We lock up more people, in fact, Marilyn told me this, it's not my idea, thank you, Marilyn. We lock up more people on this tiny island of ours than anywhere else, I think, in Europe.
That's right, yeah, we do.
Now, do we lock up a lot of the wrong... everybody thinks that crime is running rife on our streets and that you just have to walk outside the door and you're going to get mugged. Mm-hmm. And do certain people get up in front of them? This is what we've been talking about tonight. Do certain people get into court, and they're not guilty, really, but they end up in prison because of the way they look and the way they don't understand how they should communicate and respond within court?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are people who would be arrested and wouldn't know what to do. At a loss, wouldn't know that they can have a solicitor, free legal advice, and the police wouldn't advise them of that. So basically, they're just thrown to the wolves.
But now you're working with the police.
I don't actually work with the police. I work at the headquarters of Merseyside Probation Service.
Yeah.
And I must step in here and say
yes.
that, in fact, the police are obliged, absolutely obliged, to advise every person who is arrested that they have the right to free advice. And I have to say that since PACE was introduced, I've not heard of one person actually say to me, I wasn't told. They've said they didn't take it, and the police didn't go on to explain the value of it, because the police don't. But they do advise, they're obliged to do so.
So they have to say that now?
Absolutely,
fine.
and they
okay.
do. I've
but
not
if
heard
you are
from
arrested whilst under the influence of drink or drugs, you may not understand that.
Well, I get woken up 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning by people who are under the influence of drink and drugs, who, when asked if they want legal advice, say yes. And people like me have been woken up 24 hours a day.
Okay, guys, listen, I want to ask... Stay there, Gary, stay there. I want to know why we lock so many people up. I mean, it doesn't seem to be doing any good. So why do we stick so many people in prison? Why are we having this huge prison-building scheme at the moment to lock even more people up there?
Well, it's because they have yet to find a solution to crime. They've yet to get to the root cause of crime.
I know
and they really...
Hang on,
one moment.
No, let him finish. No, hang on, finish. Go on.
I absolutely know the solution, and I'm sure Frank and Tony would agree with me. Prevention is better than cure. What you should do, and what does not happen in this country, is crime education. You get sex education, life education, you'll get crime education. You should educate people as to the realities of being a criminal.
Yes, I think
if you knew what I had gone through, if you knew what Frank and Tony had gone through, you'd never do it.
But you have to educate parents
Tell me
how
the
to
most
teach their children not to commit crime.
Tell me the most degrading thing that happened to you in prison.
The most degrading thing that happened to me was in a strip cell at Garth Prison. My wife had left me, I couldn't take it. I'm locked in a canvas suit. I can't go to the toilet. If I want to go to the toilet, I've got to ask permission to be unlocked from the canvas suit, to go and sit on a plastic pot in the corner. Yeah, that is totally degrading.
The system is degrading.
So why are we still locking? But why
because
are people
it's easier
still committing
to contain
crime?
the problem and do something about it.
Yeah. So why do we still commit crime in that? Why more crime seems to be committed now by kids? I mean, the sort of organised crime to a certain extent in this country has disappeared. You know, there aren't the Krays or the Richardsons or anybody else. It's all kids on the street. A lot of it is drug-related.
It's glamorised by the media.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
The media, I think, makes a pretense of wanting to eliminate it. I know that there are people who say they would, but the way
well,
it
you
is
never
presented,
ever eliminate crime.
you can't eliminate crime wholly, but things could be done. The media could, in fact, try to encourage youth and children, and parents to encourage youth and children simply not to get involved in drugs and not to commit crime. It's not sufficient. There's not enough money put into it at the moment.
People actually want to see corporal punishment brought back. If you were to have a mass poll, they want to see it. Now, Frankie has told us, he's been given the cat and the birch and everything else. It didn't do him any, it didn't deter him from crime. No. And I don't think to a great extent a lot of people who are physically beaten is going to deter them. They're not going to say, oh, I'm frightened about that, I'm not going to do it again. They're going to commit more crime.
Look, I represent many people who are habitual criminals. There is no sentence that actually prevents people from committing crime. In Frankie's case, I think its age has come along, and he's spent a long time in prison. Eventually, he's come to his senses. He was known as the Mad Axeman. I don't think you call Frankie Fraser mad anymore. And the thing about it is that time passes, people change. But the crime that I deal with, and I handle 1,000 cases a year, and that's a very large proportion of the country's crime goes into my office. It is young people.
That was an advertisement.
No, it wasn't. We don't take work. We don't ever take work.
Hang on, just a minute, before we go on. Let me just swing to the audience. I want to know, anybody in the audience here feel that we're slipping into a time when there's great crime and it's dangerous to walk the street? There's a reasonably cross-section of audience in here, sort of all ages. I know we've got George down here who's 80, and we've got some people up here in their teens. Do you think, just put your hands up, do you think we're in a more dangerous time now than ever before? Yeah. Only a few, you see. I mean, during the time of the Krays and the Richardsons in London, and there were other gangs in Newcastle and then in Birmingham and Manchester and places like that, everybody thought it was too dangerous to commit crimes, because otherwise, if you got involved in that, they'd come along and deal with you. Do you think that's...
If I knew that, if I was a burglar in, like, Frank's district, and I knew that if I went burgling, Frank would come after me, forget it. No, thank you.
It's a shame that the police presence didn't stop him.
Well, the police
presence... We've come to the end of our discussion on this this evening, unfortunately. Let's round this bit up before we go into a little bit of light-hearted stuff and say that if you're going, and George, I'm really looking for your help here, if you're thinking it's clever, you think it's cute, and you know, some people do, that you want to go and try it, once you get nicked, if you're around about the age of 18, 25, something like that, you get nicked and you get inside, that's it. Unless you're very, very lucky, that's the end of your life to a certain extent.
Well, I'm a crime prevention officer. I work alongside the authorities, but forever, I'm a convicted criminal.
OK. Yes. Thank you very much indeed. Let's hear it for George Martin, ladies and gentlemen. Great, thank you. Right. OK. Now, over here, where are we? Thank you. This is Jack Milsom over here. Now, Jack, you've got a problem, haven't you?
Yes, I have got a problem. I've been dancing at the bar,
Lambada.
Disco, Lambada, what have you, and now they've come to me and said, we no longer want you to dance here.
Why? Because you're so sort of knackered and old and...
well, I'm not knackered. I'm old, maybe, but I'm not knackered, thank you.
Needs a good agent.
Just mind out of the way, just mind out, move out the... Eric, get out of this, Eric. I'm sorry about that, Jack, yes. Jack, he wants to be your agent, forget about it at the moment. You can see, he'd block every shot you're in. So what we're basically looking for is a partner to dance with Jack who could do the lambada. Well, and a young girl.
More or less.
All right, we'll see what we can do for you. OK, right. Hold that, Eric, if you want to do something, and sit over there. Doesn't work, I've turned it off. Now, let's go back. Are you ready for this? Are we ready? Now, we're going to have a little bit of lambada. Hang on to the music just for a moment. Please, can I just introduce... I've got to get to the right page. I can't right now. Mark, come up here. Would you introduce... This is your partner, Helen Cara. How are you, Helen? Okay. Give Helen a nice round of applause. You know, it seems to me a shame that when we're having these heavy and hard... what are sort of these cases in the law courts and stuff like that, maybe we should take a break after you've been teaching people how to be good performers in court. Could you turn around this way? Would you like just turn around so we can see there? Good performers. Maybe they should take a break, you have a little adjournment and do some cabaret. That make it all easier for those people who have to sit in court for so long. You're going to do the lambada.
We are.
To finish off with a little... Would you like to take it away? You ready for the music?
We are. Ready.
Music maestro, please.